You know that feeling, the one where the word accountability pops up,
Mhm.
and suddenly you're picturing awkward performance reviews or maybe even a blame storm brewing.
Yeah, it definitely has that negative vibe
It's
sometimes.
a pretty common reaction, I think. But what if we flip that script entirely? What if accountability could actually be the secret ingredient for a thriving workplace?
Hmm.
A way to empower employees and fuel genuine growth.
That's a really interesting way to put it.
Well, that's exactly the deep dive we're taking today. We've gathered a rich collection of material, training blueprints outlining practical steps, some insightful leadership philosophies, and expert perspectives really dissecting why accountability matters.
A good mix of sources then.
Exactly. And our mission is pretty simple: to extract the most potent insights, the real game changers, and give you, the listener, a clear, actionable understanding of how modern accountability practices can cultivate success and, well, leave the finger pointing behind.
Okay, let's get into it. What's fascinating right off the bat is how consistently our sources challenge that knee-jerk negative reaction to accountability.
Right.
One training presentation we looked at introduces this concept of easy accountability, and at its heart is a surprisingly supportive idea. The primary goal isn't to catch people out, but to actively help them succeed.
It really reframes the whole purpose, doesn't it?
It does.
We're so often conditioned to see accountability as the disciplinary thing that kicks in when stuff goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But then another source we've got here, it boldly suggests that when implemented effectively, accountability can actually be fun and easy.
Fun and easy. That's quite a statement.
I know. That's a pretty radical departure from the norm. They even describe it as a giving activity.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder how that's even possible, right?
Exactly. How do you make accountability feel like giving something positive? And if we think about why the shift might be so important right now,
Hmm.
it kind of connects to broader trends around employee well-being, engagement. People are looking for support and development, not just judgment.
Yeah, makes sense.
So framing accountability as a giving activity, providing clarity, support, opportunities for growth, that could be a really powerful way to foster a more positive, productive work environment.
But the big question remains,
Yeah.
how do you actually make accountability feel fun and easy?
That's the million-dollar question.
Which I guess takes us to the really practical nuts and bolts. These training presentations, they get incredibly specific about structuring accountability. They advocate breaking down each job into, get this, 5 to 15 specific component parts.
5 to 15? Yeah.
When you first hear that, it sounds a bit like micromanagement gone wild, doesn't it?
It might sound that way initially, yeah. But the underlying logic is actually quite compelling when you dig into it.
How so?
Well, by dissecting a role into these distinct elements, you move away from those vague, subjective performance reviews.
Right, the generally meets expectations kind of thing.
Exactly. And you move towards much more clearly defined, trackable areas of responsibility. It gives you a really granular view of what success actually looks like for that specific role.
Okay, I can see that. And then for each of these components, the sources emphasize needing concrete measurement.
Mm-hmm. Metrics.
We're talking metrics like frequency, how often something should be done, quantity, how much, speed, how quickly, and quality, how well.
So it's not just a simple yes or no, did they do the task?
No, it's a deeper dive into the how of performance.
Right. And what's particularly insightful, I thought, was the suggestion to visualize this with a matrix tracking system, basically a performance scorecard.
Oh, okay, like a dashboard.
Pretty much. It offers a clear, at-a-glance overview of how someone's doing across all those key job components. It provides a visual framework for both the employee and the manager.
Okay, but this kind of detailed structure, I mean, it could feel really top-down if it's not rolled out carefully.
Definitely a risk.
But the training materials we looked at really stress presenting this breakdown to employees as a tool for their own success.
That's the key part.
It's about involving them in the process, refining those components, agreeing on reasonable targets together.
Oh.
That collaborative piece seems absolutely crucial for getting buy-in.
Oh, absolutely. When accountability measures are co-created, it just transforms the whole dynamic.
How do you mean?
Well, instead of feeling like something just imposed on them from above,
Yeah.
employees are much more likely to see it as like a roadmap, a guide for hitting their goals and contributing to the team's success. This ties back to what another source said about achieving mutual understanding of expectations. It has to be a two-way street.
Okay, that makes sense. But what potential challenges do you see in actually implementing such a detailed breakdown? It sounds like a lot of upfront work.
That's a great question. I mean, yeah, it could definitely be time-consuming to set up initially. No doubt about that.
And maybe some resistance, people feeling it's too bureaucratic.
Possibly. And you also raised a good point earlier. How do you make sure these very specific components still capture the more nuanced, maybe less easily quantifiable parts of a job?
Right, not everything fits neatly into a number.
Exactly. Those are valid concerns. The initial setup is an investment. And you're right, not every single aspect of every job fits perfectly into a quantifiable metric.
So what's the answer then?
That's where the collaborative refinement comes back in. The goal isn't to create this rigid, inflexible system, but rather a framework. One that provides clarity but still allows for some adaptability and, acknowledges those less tangible contributions.
Okay, so you've got the structure in place, the broken down job components, the ways to measure them. How does the rubber actually meet the road? How do you do accountability day to day, week to week?
The training materials outline a process. It involves things like weekly scoring, maybe on a spreadsheet.
Weekly?
Yeah, consistent and regular but brief one-on-one meetings.
How brief?
Like 15 to 20 minutes, based specifically on the scorecard data.
Ah, so data-driven conversations.
Precisely. The consistency is key. Weekly scoring gives you that regular pulse on performance. It prevents big surprises, allows for timely adjustments, and those short, focused one-on-ones create a dedicated space. You discuss progress, address challenges, provide support, but it's all grounded in objective information, not just gut feelings.
And it's not just about pointing out the negatives,
Yeah.
right? I remember one of the training presentations really made a point about celebrating successes.
Yes, positive reinforcement. They even use the term high fives.
Yeah, high fives. That really underscores the positive approach they're aiming for.
And that's a critical element, often missed in, let's say, more traditional approaches to accountability.
Definitely.
Recognizing and celebrating good performance doesn't just boost morale, it reinforces the behaviors you actually want to see repeated.
Makes sense.
And then when areas for improvement are identified, the focus shifts. It's about providing support, resources, maybe seeing those instances as opportunities to refine a process or offer some targeted training.
Rather than just assigning blame.
Exactly. It circles right back to that giving activity idea. You're giving employees the tools and support they need to improve.
Okay, let's pivot a bit now. One of our sources, it's titled The Importance of Accountability in Leadership, makes a really powerful statement. It says, when an organization struggles with accountability, the leaders are ultimately the solution.
That puts a significant weight of responsibility right at the top, doesn't it?
It really does.
And it emphasizes the foundational role leaders play in modeling personal accountability. The article stresses that leaders absolutely must do what you say you are going to do.
Building trust.
It's the bedrock of trust within the team. If leaders aren't seen as reliable, as accountable for their own commitments, it's incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, to build a culture of accountability throughout the whole organization.
The article also digs into this common issue, the intention versus result gap, where people mean well, but the desired outcomes just don't happen.
Ah, yes, the road to, well, unmet goals.
Right. They propose a 3-step process for leaders to bridge this gap. First step. Establish a mutual understanding of the desired results. Clearly define the what, when, and how.
Which connects directly back to those clear expectations we were just talking about.
Exactly.
And crucially, it's not a top-down dictation. It has to be a collaborative dialogue. Empowering employees to ask clarifying questions, making sure everyone's genuinely on the same page right from the start, that's essential.
Okay, step 1. Mutual understanding. What's step 2?
Step 2 involves a realistic assessment. Can we actually achieve these results with the current skill set, the current resources? It's about proactively identifying potential obstacles.
Ah, foresight and support.
You got it. Thinking ahead about potential roadblocks like scheduling conflicts, team availability, maybe needing specific skills or training, budget limitations.
It's about setting achievable expectations, but doing it collaboratively.
Precisely. And the final step, step 3, is active follow-through. Rigorously tracking progress, using regular check-ins, maybe mini milestones, and offering support and coaching when there's a risk of deliverables slipping. That ongoing engagement is just vital.
It keeps things on track.
It does. And the article doesn't shy away from saying leaders should demand personal accountability. It sets a clear standard. Commitments matter, and they need to be honored.
So it's a balance of support and clear expectations. What are some ways leaders might unintentionally, maybe subtly, undermine accountability in their teams?
That's interesting. Well, I can think of a few. Maybe if a leader consistently makes excuses for their own missed deadlines. or doesn't follow through on promises they made to the team.
Yeah, that sends a bad signal.
Definitely. Or perhaps if they create a culture where mistakes are punished really harshly, that just discourages people from taking ownership or even admitting something went wrong.
Creates fear.
Exactly. Inconsistency in holding everyone to the same standards, or that fear-based culture that stifles open communication and learning from mistakes, those things can erode accountability very, very quickly. So if accountability is this crucial thing, what are some common reasons it actually breaks down in organizations? Our source, Unlocking the Power of Accountability, points to a few key culprits. The first one seems almost too simple. Unclear expectations.
Ah, the classic.
It paints that familiar picture, right? A meeting ends, everyone walks out, and they all have a slightly different idea of who's supposed to do what next.
That lack of clarity is just a fundamental accountability killer.
Huh.
When roles, responsibilities, expected outcomes aren't crystal clear, it's almost inevitable that things will slip through the cracks.
So what's the fix?
Well, the article suggests leveraging tools, things like project management software, shared organizational plans, ways to explicitly document ownership, answering those basic questions. Who's responsible? What does success look like? By when?
Makes sense? Document it clearly. Another big barrier mentioned is low employee engagement.
Yeah, that's a big one. The idea here is that if people aren't really invested in their work or they don't feel connected to the company's overall mission, they're just less likely to feel that sense of responsibility for the outcomes.
It's a pretty direct link, isn't it? When employees feel disconnected or like their contributions don't really matter,
Yeah.
that sense of ownership just naturally fades. The article really emphasizes connecting individual roles to the bigger picture, the organizational purpose, clearly showing how each person's work contributes to the company's success.
So purpose drives ownership.
Engagement often follows when people understand the impact of their efforts, yeah.
And the third major obstacle they highlighted was a lack of feedback. Or maybe not just a lack, but feedback that isn't timely, specific, and importantly, supportive.
Right. Without that regular guidance, how do individuals know if they're on the right track or how they might need to adjust their approach?
It's like flying blind.
Exactly. Feedback is truly the lifeblood of accountability. Waiting for those infrequent formal reviews just isn't enough.
Needs to be more ongoing.
Definitely. Addressing performance in a timely way, giving specific examples, good and bad, and framing feedback as a collaborative effort to get better results, all crucial for fostering that accountable culture.
Okay, now let's think about the tangible impact. What happens when accountability is strong versus when it's weak? Unlocking the Power of Accountability specifically looks at fast growth companies and also small businesses.
Right.
For those companies in rapid growth phases, a lack of accountability can apparently lead to decision-making gridlock,
Yeah, everything slows down.
a breakdown of trust among team members, and ultimately it can really slow down progress.
In those really dynamic, fast-scaling environments, clarity of roles and responsibilities is just absolutely paramount. Without it, things can quickly fall into chaos, duplication of effort. It's messy.
But conversely,
Conversely, as the article points out, a strong culture of accountability can actually be a catalyst. It can fuel even greater productivity and engagement in those fast-growth companies. It becomes an accelerator.
okay, and what about for small businesses? The consequences of lacking accountability might be even more immediate, right?
Oh, definitely. More acutely felt. Missed deadlines or tasks just not getting done can have a direct, sometimes significant impact on revenue.
Cash flow implications.
Exactly. And uneven workloads in a small team. That can lead to serious frustration, burnout.
Resentment builds up.
For sure. And ultimately, it can erode the trust that customers place in the business. That's huge for a small company.
So the stakes are really high.
Precisely. In smaller teams, each person's contribution just carries so much more weight. A lack of accountability in even one or two key roles can create a massive ripple effect, damaging internal dynamics, external relationships, and, yeah, a bottom line.
We touched on this earlier, but that unlocking the power of accountability source really hammers home the point that personal accountability for leaders isn't just important, it's like foundational.
Non-negotiable, almost.
It even shares this relatable story about a leader who had this aha moment, realizing their own lack of clear communication had significantly contributed to accountability issues simmering within their team.
That's a powerful illustration, isn't it? That accountability really does start at the top. The article prompts leaders to do some pretty critical self-reflection.
Like what?
Asking questions like, do I consistently follow through on my commitments? Do I readily take responsibility when things don't go as planned? Or do I look for excuses? Am I setting clear and consistent standards for my team?
Walking the talk.
Exactly. Modeling accountability in their own behavior creates this powerful, pervasive influence throughout the whole organization. It sets the tone.
But this whole idea of accountability, it doesn't have to be this harsh, punitive thing, does it? Our source material seems pretty clear that you can balance a focus on results with a more human-centered approach.